Hello again. Thank you very much for staying with us. President Cyril Ramaphosa has urged the nation to defend police officers who are up against brazen criminals daily. He called for stronger community policing relations and strategic partnerships with stakeholders. The president delivered the keynote address at the annual Police Commemoration at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. 34 police officers were killed in the line of duty in the last financial year. We're joined now by Richard Mamabolo from the Police and Prison Civil Rights Union and Eldred Klerk, a policing expert and director of the African Centre for Security and Intelligence. Gentlemen, a very good evening to you. Thanks indeed for your time. Richard, let me start with you. You've basically said that this commemoration is meaningless for you as pop crew. There's simply no plan to counter police killings in this country.
Most definitely. In fact, that is reverberated amongst a lot of our members and, of course, those families who have lost their loved ones. They feel that the event is meaningless because on a yearly basis, we do get rising numbers of police officers who have been killed at work and are being commemorated. So that, of course, has created a lot of burden on most of these families. And, of course, the fact that we just had about 40 police officers killed in this year alone. And just in the past weeks, we had 9 police officers as well amongst those 40. So that shows that there has not been much done in ensuring that we keep police killings. So that is quite a worry. You consider the South African Police Service strategic plan for 2020 to 2025. It mainly focuses on visible police visibility, and of course what the president had said in his State of the Nation address, that we need to fight violent crimes. We need to have violent crimes within the next decade. So that on its own demonstrates the fact that as much as the asset goes by the leadership, however, there have been budgetary constraints which of course affect the work and the relationship that police have with communities.
Yeah. Eldred, I mean, just yesterday, Pop Crew certainly has a point in terms of police killings. Just yesterday, the minister, Begitele, was paying tribute to another police officer who was killed. Is there an increase in this? Do we even know what the motive for these killings is?
Well, thank you, Caselda, and thank you for focusing on this. And Richard is correct. You would have hoped that there would be closer working relationship between the leadership and management of the South African Police Service and all the police unions, including the public sector unions. What we don't know is what is the circumstances of each individual unnatural death of a South African police officer. We don't know if it's a question of training and real-world training to face the kind of conditions under which they work every day. We don't know if it's a question of policy or regulation, and we definitely don't know whether it's just the extraordinary expectation that we have that police should put themselves in harm's way without due caution and discretion. So the expectation from the public, especially now when police have additional duties in line with COVID regulations to keep us healthy and to keep us safe, they work in extraordinarily long shifts. Officer health is affected, fatigue, exhaustion sets in, and there's a general, anger and despair in society. So the conditions under which officers work is also stressful enough. So until we learn from every single death and then put in place corrective measures, it's very difficult to tell whether this is an undue increase or whether it's an increase of circumstance.
And in fact, due to those changed conditions that police officers have to operate in, Richard, you also want the danger and the death allowance up. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, in fact, that's one of the frustrating members that our members have been complaining about. The danger allowance currently stands at 400, and that was something which was agreed on in 2001. According to us, in line with the kind of agreement that was signed, it was supposed to progressively increase, and had it been increasing since then, it would now be standing at around 1,500. So that's one of the challenges. And of course, that's what actually has seen a lot of police officers their morale being low. Well, with the danger allowance as well, out of the many widows that have obviously been accounted for, we noted that the 200,000 rand, that is a death allowance, has not been sufficient enough to cover the needs of the families of slain police officers. Some of these funds cannot even take their kids to school. So you've got a lot of frustrations, and of course, on a yearly basis, when this commemoration is called, a lot of people feel the pain, not only the physical pain, but the pain that their kids cannot go to school, they cannot sustain their families. So those are matters that we feel should obviously be looked into seeing how we can actually assist the widows and the orphans of these police officers who have been killed.
I mean, police training, Eldred, is one of the issues that, is consistently being raised. Policing in the 21st century, very different. Should police training be a bit more real world and scenario based?
Absolutely, Griselda. I was privileged enough to be part of the Gauteng Legislature. Their Community Safety Committee had a 2-day virtual and in-person seminar reflecting on resourcing of police and an assessment of whether police have what support and additional resources they need. And we had Lieutenant General Elias Mawela actually concur with the point that police training right now should come into the 21st century. It should be scenario-based. It should understand the conditions under which police work. There's a very different about policing Deep Sloot or areas of Eldorado Park where lighting and road conditions and the density of houses is very different to the leafy suburbs of, say, Houghton or policing Sandton or downtown Johannesburg. And police do need to be able to contend with all of those conditions, but be prepared through structured drills, support and training, and proper resourcing to be able to effectively their work safely.
Eldred, just very quickly, I mean, the recent riots put a spotlight on the level of intelligence in the country. Are we ready if we see a resurgence of this kind of violence?
Well, let me just answer that question to you very quickly. One, I want to thank the spotlight that the media has put on this. You yourself were out there on the day when we expected a second wave of this kind of riots and violence. And we had the Provincial Commissioner of Gauteng out there trying to reassure people, trying to provide public advisories, and trying to caution us against getting involved. So there's a large role to play in managing misinformation and in managing any kind of instigation. The other thing is that Nat Joins have now taken responsibility for keeping a wary eye on making sure that information that's received by intelligence or that's in the public arena is looked at, it's analyzed, and particular scenarios and plans are put in place. And we hope that NatJock will continue that. What we would hope is that they would continue to take people like yourselves in their confidence and have a daily or at least weekly conversation with us to assure us, the public, that they're ready, that we shouldn't be getting involved, and that should something happen, there will be consequences for us doing so.
Richard, the President, if I heard correct, looking for more engagement on some of these issues that you have raised. Would you be open to that discussion?
Most definitely. I think just before that, what Eldred said is actually very important, because I think as much as we know that we cannot comprehend for the number of police versus the public, there should be some form of intelligence-led policing, which would obviously ensure that we actually become more preoccupied with preventative measures instead of reacting to certain situations. But of course, I think at the end of the day, without the involvement of communities, we are not going any far. Remember, we come from an era where police and communities did not have good relationships. Now, post-94, there has not been sufficient dialogue to look into the kind of civilian oversight that communities should play when it comes to policing. And I think, and of course, I think what has been reported generally has been the negativities around what police do instead of looking how we can actually work towards building good working relations. So that is one of our focus as a union, as Pop Crew. And of course, we've got 10 programs that we work with in ensuring that we start working with different school kids from a young age so that they understand the role that police play instead of seeing police as enemies.
Richard Mamabolo from the Police and Prison Civil Rights Union, and Eldred Klerk, a policing expert and director of the African Centre for Security and Intelligence.